What's up, my fellow Call of Duty professionals? Hope you're all having a fantastic weekend. This past week, we've had a ton of fantastic changes to Warzone, with new guns, meta-changing balances, and of course, this new Juggernaut Royale mode, which honestly is becoming one of my favorite Battle Royale modes they've added so far. So, in this video, I'm gonna go over my best tips and tricks I can give you to secure the Juggernaut for yourself, and how to fight the Juggernaut, and the best way to use the Juggernaut to dominate in this mode. And just before we start, I'm going to assume that you'll be primarily playing this mode to try and get the Juggernaut suit. So some of these tips might not necessarily be the best way to win in this match, but it will be the best way to get the Juggernaut as much as possible so you can have a ton of fun. And as usual, if you enjoyed this video, I'd massively appreciate a like and subscribe. Okay, so let's begin. And for tip number 1, that is, if you redeploy from the Gulag, you'll want to try and stay in the air for a bit to see where the next Juggernaut is going to land. Now, the reason being that you can then pinpoint exactly where it is once the Juggernaut crate hits the ground, and instead of having to traverse through the land and get shot at from other squads trying to get it, you can just skip all of that and land right at the crate. Now, if you're doing this, I would suggest waiting a bit though to see if there are other people floating around in the air. And if you see someone else trying to land there too, I'd say just let them go first, and once they start trying to get the suit, you can just eliminate them as they are helpless, instead of letting them do that to you. Now, admittedly, this isn't a very good tip if you're trying to maximize your teamwork with your squad, since there is pretty good chance that you will just die and leave your buddies alone. But again, if you're interested in playing this Juggernaut mode, I'm going to assume you're probably willing to take risks like this to experience using the Juggernaut in Warzone, which is why I'm including this tip over here. Moving on to tip number 2. This is more of a glitch that you need to be aware of, and that's if you're carrying a minigun that you managed to loot from a dead Juggernaut, and then you were lucky enough to manage to find yourself a Juggernaut suit, you will be unable to reload your minigun when you're the Juggernaut. Now, this is super frustrating, and unfortunately, one of my squad mates found this out the hard way, because when we were playing yesterday, he managed to find a minigun over a Juggernaut that we managed to kill, and then when he ended up getting the Juggernaut suit for himself, he only had 200 shots, and he wasn't able to reload at all, and it was just so annoying. But yeah, you need to be aware of this. I think this is something that will definitely get patched in the near future, but as of right now, do not have the minigun while you're trying to get the Juggernaut suit. Okay, and on to tip number 3. And that is, at the start of the game, when you see the various locations that the Juggernaut will drop into, it can be very tempting to just land there as soon as possible to try and get the suit. But this is actually the time where you are least likely to be able to secure it, because pretty much everyone is going to be landing there and trying to do the same thing. And what's worse is that if you actually do manage to land there, there'll almost be no loot available for you to get because of the sheer amount of people dropping there to try and get the Juggernaut. So you will most likely just die, and if you do happen to survive, you'll have very little money unless you manage to kill a whole bunch of people. Now, what you want to do instead is land somewhere else without the Juggernaut initially, and use this time to loot and gear up and get yourselves your loadout crates, good weapons, and vehicles. Then, you'll want to wait for the next location to spawn the Juggernaut, and when you go over to secure it now, you'll be able to properly fight other squads when you arrive there, and at this point, a good chunk of the people in the game would have died from that initial drop, so instead of competing with like over 100 people to try and get the suit from one place, you'll be competing with a few people now, and the odds get even better in your favor as the circle gets smaller and smaller and more people are eliminated from the match. By following this method, me and my friends yesterday managed to have at least one of us get the Juggernaut suit in nearly every round we played. So, if you're having trouble getting it, definitely do try this out. Alright, so moving on to tip number 4, which I have for you. This is what I'm going to call the Juggernaut extraction loadout. And if you're playing with your friends and you're taking turns to get the Juggernaut, this could be one of the classes you'd want to run if it's your turn to get the suit. Now, the class setup is simply to use overkill with your weapon of choice, and make sure you're running a riot shield and a smoke grenade. Now, the reason being that you want to do this is that when you're going to secure the Juggernaut crate, it does take quite a bit of time to get there and actually secure it, which leaves you very vulnerable to getting shot in the back as you're moving to it and securing it. So, by having a riot shield on your back, it'll make it much harder to kill you. And once you get to the actual crate, you'll want to throw a smoke grenade there, which makes it even harder for someone to see and shoot at you. Okay, so for tip number 5 now, this is almost like the opposite of tip number 4, because it's all about effectively eliminating the people trying to get the Juggernaut crate before you. And this is basically to always have at least one person in your squad running an airstrike or a cluster strike. So when you run towards the Juggernaut suit and you see other people doing the same, you can call in that airstrike to either delay them from getting it or get a nice multi-kill. It's also very effective at killing Juggernauts, so if someone does manage to get the suit before you, your airstrike could land right there and then, and you can at least end his fun before it even begins, and then a new Juggernaut will spawn somewhere else that you can go and then take. And now, on to tip number 6, which is when you have the Juggernaut suit, you'll want to make sure you or your squad have a vehicle around that you can transport to different parts of the map. Now, the reason being is the Juggernaut is super slow, and the minigun it uses is very inaccurate at medium and long range. So if you're caught out in the open, you'll be easily gunned down by other squads who are a lot more mobile and accurate than you. So the best ways I've found to get kills using the Juggernaut is to either drive around and jump off your truck to engage people, or if you're in an area with a lot of buildings and cover, you can end up forcing a lot of close-range gunfights where you can really dominate as the Juggernaut. Now, for my final tip, this is going to be about a pretty effective way and simple way to kill the Juggernaut if you don't have good weapons like thermite or all that kind of stuff, and that is to simply run them over if you spot a Juggernaut out in the open. Now, bear in mind that you won't get an instant kill like you would if you were trying to run over a regular player, but you will degrade the Juggernaut's health extremely rapidly, and because they are so slow, they won't really be able to avoid you if you're charging at them in a truck or a car, so this is a pretty easy way to kill them if you can just ram them like that until they die. And pretty much, yeah, this all wraps up this video. I hope you enjoyed the content, and if you did, please remember to hit that like and subscribe button for me. I greatly appreciate it, and yeah, hope to see you guys in the next video. Thanks and stay safe.